Start our pledge together. Yeah. All right. Are you ready? Great. Good. Of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, there is a sign up sheet over there in the Constellation Information Hub, that table. Please consider putting your name down if you want to speak tonight. And we'll have some more ground rules. I just want to basically go over the game plan. Just make sure we keep any of the sign conversations to outside. Hope you brought your umbrellas, just because it makes it hard to keep this all going swimmingly. So just the game plan for tonight. Obviously, it's a public hearing, a continued public hearing. This is the last in-person opportunity, but the comment part in writing, you can still submit writing comments in writing, through Monday at 5 p.m. So we'll go through the changes that have been made to the draft joint consolidation agreement quickly, Lauren and I, and then the electeds will do a very quick go around. No discussion really, because there's no time for it, but just making sure to highlight any other issues that still need to be addressed that we'll then work on addressing after we hear from the public tonight. And we'll get going with public comment no later than 7:30. And then stick around to, keep working through it as two boards until we drop. I'll save the game plan and some ground rules for right before we get to the public comments, but Lauren, let's kick it off with going through the changes. All this stuff is on the village website under the government efficiency tab. Thanks so much to our staff for rocking out, getting so much other information up there today. So you can follow along online and with us here, and we'll take it from there. So yeah.
I just wanted to mention that these changes are changes that are suggested based on the comment that's been received in these hearings so far. Nothing's been decided and won't be decided until the next meeting when you actually vote.
Thank you.
On the town website, we've actually restructured the website so that there's much more organization of all of the documents. And so you can go there, there's a section for if you're new to consolidation, the documentation that we've got. There's all the one pages are all in different sections now on the town website. So if you go to the town website, click the consolidation link, then there's all of the documentation there, and it's better organized than it was last time.
Sweet. So both websites plus newpaltzconsolidation.com.
Website.
Awesome. So here's our list of changes that are so far being, worked on in this version of the draft agreement. I'm taking odds, Lauren's taking evens. So the first is to add a summary of the fiscal changes chart. So that is also on both websites, on all the websites that are about this. Basically,
Could you tell me again where on the website and rather than making Lauren's repeat everything?
yeah, so it should be under our consolidation tab. It's the page that I know Nicole emailed to us this afternoon, a couple hours ago. And so you'll find these, the fiscal analysis, summary of changes as a result of consolidation. So that first edit that I just basically named is linked right there underneath the 5/28/26 version. I don't know where it is on the town site.
Okay.
Sorry.
Where can she find the list of changes that you're doing? Is that on there?
It should be.
First few pages for JCA.
Yeah, and then the final version, the red line is up there. There's a couple, yeah, it should all be under the draft joint consolidation agreement document. And then it's all in, I think I recirculated a bunch of emails right before in a state of panic. Sorry. Yeah, William's nodding. So yeah, so that first one is to add that actual chart. And added some language in the second paragraph on page C2.1 of the fiscal narrative. So it's basically a new table, table 6, and it should be linked on there, but yeah.
The next is on page 7. There was a desire to know how facility integration would work. So what was added to this section was that the interim joint governance committee, formerly known as the steering committee, will establish subject matter work groups consisting of elected officials, representatives of village and town departments, board and commissions, and other subject matter experts to accomplish this goal. Work groups will include, but are not limited to, a facilities integration work group and others as identified by the interim joint governance committee. Should the town determine the need for any of these work groups post-consolidation, the town board will extend them as temporary advisory work groups through the transition period comprised of town elected officials, representatives of town departments, members of boards and commissions, and subject matter experts.
And so this next one was a suggestion to just change transition to interim period and making sure we're consistent throughout the agreement. So just really wanted to highlight that because if anyone else catches inconsistencies like that, we need to get them right.
The next was on page 18, cite state statute requiring, somebody wanted us to cite the state statute requiring special district expenses to be paid by special district users. So that statute is stated here.
The next proposed edit is to include the good cause eviction law. So basically it will add this part saying the municipalities recognize that GML Article 17A, blah, 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 effect on existing laws, transition period, pertaining to the common administration, uniform enforcement of laws in the consolidated town, provides that all local laws, ordinances, rules, or regulations of the village and of the town governments, such as the village good cause eviction law, naming it, in effect on the date of consolidation shall remain in full force and effect within the respective areas of village and town, outside village and town-wide that existed prior to consolidation insofar as the local laws, ordinances, rules, or regulations are not repugnant to law unless repealed, amended, or adopted into town law. So village tenants, if voters were to say, let's consolidate, and this all goes into effect, we still have these protections on the books. And making that clear. Yeah, and enforced and in reality in all the ways, yeah.
The next change on page 23, we were asked to add a reference adopting village zoning. So section 11B, 5B, or 2, amend the town zoning code as necessary to result in a hybrid consolidation town zoning code during the interim period with an effective date of January 1, 2028, or as soon as practical thereafter, by adopting village zoning districts and use regulations as they exist in chapter 212 of village code for regulation of the area to be known as the hamlet of New Paltz, and repealing the village zoning code as soon as practical after the effective date of the hybrid zoning code.
The next proposed edit is to add some references specifically to harmonization of codes. So this will make sure that we address that the goal is of the joint review process under the guidance of Joint Consolidation Agreement Steering Committee of the municipalities' codes, local laws, ordinances, rules, and regulations. Purpose of this joint process is to identify and develop recommendations to resolve conflicts between the respective laws, ordinances, rules, regulations with respect to the common administration and unified enforcement, and to make recommendations for necessary repeal of, amendment to, or adoption of local laws, codes, ordinances, rules, or regulations. And this is a new part in order to accomplish a harmonization of village and town code.
Next, this is throughout the document, we were replacing joint steering committee with interim joint governance committee. And the point for this wordy label is, the purpose of this change is to increase clarity as to the committee's purpose, which is to guide the transition during the interim period from an affirmative referendum vote to the date of consolidation.
So this next edit is, it came from one of the public hearings so far to clarify that transition costs include one-time costs to carry out both interim period and transition period actions detailed in the joint consolidation agreement. So adding this part about one-time resources needed to carry out transition period actions detailed in this joint consolidation agreement will be provided for in the 2028-2029 town budgets. The interim period, transition period, one-time costs are presented together in Exhibit C11. And so that was in Section 4D for anyone who's following along.
On page 12, we were asked to create a design review board, section 70II. Add existing village board and council. The town shall create and operationalize a design review board. The board will assume the responsibilities of the village's design review board and will perform town-wide design review functions as defined by future town boards.
The next proposed edit is to define joint consolidation agreement as a governance framework rather than a master plan for additional policy changes. This one I have to say has really helps my brain kind of think about what this whole thing that we're doing here is, because that's what it is, a governance framework, not some sort of master plan and a place for policy. So basically adding this to page 2, 2 extra whereases. Whereas the consolidation of a village and town is a significant policy decision and undertaking, and the JCA is designed to provide a framework for a consolidated town governance structure that supports a smooth transition and the continuation of existing services to which residents are accustomed. And whereas this gradual and deliberate approach to the transition is in the best interest of residents and anticipates that future town boards and town constituents will evaluate and consider additional policy opportunities and alternative governance models, such as the creation of a fire district or the expansion of services, including spring refuse collection for residents outside the village. And so that is the summary of changes made so far, right?
Oh, there's one more.
Oh, there's one more, sorry.
Page 6 has been a hot topic. Cite the section of town law that authorizes the town to contract with an incorporate fire company. As authorized by town law, Article 11, 184.1, the town anticipates contracting with the New Falls Fire Department Incorporated, a not-for-profit fire corporation organized under Section 1402 of the Not-for-Profit Corporation Law, to provide fire protection services to the current New Paltz Fire Protection District, serving the area outside the village of New Paltz, and to the area currently known as the village of New Paltz, through a new hamlet fire protection district to be created by the town of New Paltz.
Okay, now that's, sorry. I just really like odd numbers. So yeah, and so just wanted to also make clear that any additional edits that the boards decide are essential to be considered in the August 5th vote about whether or not to move this to referendum or not will keep being added until Friday. Anything after Friday, we will be just really holding those until the table, and we'll be going over them in much the same way. So just so everyone can kind of follow along with what the process looks like. So with that, let's take the next, 15 minutes to go around to all the electeds at the table to just see, like, is there anything else that is one of your top issues that should be addressed in this process? And then we'll make sure to keep track of those until after we hear from the public. And, we'll also make sure to address, and not necessarily like right now, but like later get into what is appropriate for, addressing in the JCA versus what's not, because I do keep finding myself being like, oh, what about this? And then it's like, but that's not what this is about. That's a different lawmaking process, right? So, we'll just make sure to keep track of that stuff too. Do you want to kick us off, Rich, and then we'll kind of go this way? Yeah.
Thanks. So, I've had a connection and affinity to New Paltz community for most years of my life. My wife grew up here and we moved back here 11 years ago. We absolutely love this town, our community, and all that this location has had to offer our lives. We truly consider it our forever home. As a village trustee, my role is to decide on my role is not to decide on consolidation. Is to decide whether you should have the opportunity to vote on the referendum and to make sure you have all the facts and my honest perspective to make that decision at the voting booth. It's true that a willingness to change, especially a change of this substance, has to involve some degree of dissatisfaction. And I had just gotten to telling you how much I love this place, but I thought maybe it was helpful to preface some of my comments with what I also think could be improved about our town and village. And reflecting on some of these things has allowed me to open my mind toward a better model. Currently, we have many departments that are under-resourced and are understaffed. So glad to see Sarah here today, although we take care of our own Zoom meetings throughout, and it's just a small example of some of the things we see when we think about how more resources or combined resources could be beneficial. It often may delay services, make them harder to access, make them harder to understand for people, limit our communications and engagement. We're trying to come up with a budget to mail you postcards, and it's not easy. We are also functioning with some outdated systems and software and online resources. I've had the opportunity to sit down and learn about some of these, and they could all be upgraded in many of the departments. Our volunteer elected boards barely meet the need to staff themselves every year. Probably the week I arrived in this town 11 years ago, the mayor asked me if I would be willing to serve on a board. I said, I know nothing about what's happening here. I don't feel qualified at all. And he said, we really need planning board members. And that's an example. It also happens to be how I found myself sitting on this board. We struggle to hold quorum. We put significant responsibilities on few members that are committed to the success. Many members of these boards are reluctantly recruited to serve by the leaders. And among those that are elected, the majority have run on uncontested races. These are not signs of a high-functioning government with adequate community resources to sustain itself. Both town and village municipal facilities are not worthy of the incredible people that work there. This building has the potential, but it's in need of significant renovation and upgrades, and many town employees have been working out of leaking trailers that are miles away and barely functioning for years. These challenges that arise related to planning and zoning on the borders of town and village that result in unanticipated negative impact. Even most recently, conflicts and lawsuits between the town and the village that cost tens of thousands of dollars of taxpayer money and wasted hundreds of hours of volunteer planning board time, of which I was one of those. We have very limited affordable programs available for seniors and youth that are run by our town or village. Our recreational facilities are inadequate relative to other places I visit regularly. Our pools in disrepair, our fields are not maintained as they could be. And we have very few amenities for a town with the resources that we would imagine we would have access to. And for a town committed to bicycle and pedestrian activity, we have limited bike and pedestrian routes throughout our town. Sections of our main street are significantly unsafe for pedestrians, let alone bikes. And our sidewalk infrastructure is limited throughout the village and are unsafe for handicapped persons in certain sections. So just sharing some thoughts about, as I mentioned earlier, in sort of change management thinking, like you need some dissatisfaction. And I wanted to share a few points that originate my mind, my open-mindedness to these ideas. And I understand the tendency of many people to not want this change, but my perspective is strongly influenced by the fact that not everything's working as is. And I believe there are many opportunities for improvement in our town through aligning our leadership structure, integrating functions, consolidating planning, merging facilities, and combining resources to create opportunities that are just not possible today. I truly believe this plan can help us build the municipality we want together in our future. And I want to speak very briefly about two topics, which is what we were asked to do. In terms of the financial benefit, the combined financial analysis is available to all voters. It includes an overview, tables, and backup resources that we continue to share based on questions from the boards and the public. At this time, there are nearly 30 pages, at last count, and growing of financial information and analysis that, in a very straightforward and conservative way, explain the financial impact of consolidation. Any questions you have about those can be brought to us and we'll continue to help answer them. We've all discussed that the analysis shows that if we brought the two municipalities together without a single change and without the CETC annual grant, it's possible that town taxes would go up by up to 3%. This worst case scenario is a theoretical baseline, but not a reality. And it's important to note that town taxes have gone up by that amount or more every year for the past 10 years. And the elected officials that raise those taxes every year for the past 10 years continue to be elected. However, again, that scenario is very unlikely to occur. The most likely result is that after consolidation and with the award of a $1 million award from the CETC, village taxes would go down over 10% and town taxes would be conservatively reduced by a few percent. It's important to reiterate that the CETC incentive is significant and very reliable. It is a $20 million line item in a $254 billion state budget, and its elimination would cause significant local negative impact to many municipalities. I just don't think that's a high risk factor. I'm confident that both town and village expenses could be reduced further over time, but that's not included in the analysis at this time. And especially after activities and expenses related to the transition period end, and there's an opportunity to realize more synergies. We've talked about complex funding agreements, legal fees, overlapping administrative tasks, all opportunities for reduction. One of the speakers that came before us cited research that said that most municipalities that go through this process are able to reduce 2 to 5% of their budget. I don't know if they were sharing that as a statement that it's a bad idea or a good idea, but if I were running a business that could cut 2 to 5% out of its budget through a strategic action, I would take that bet. And that's what the research tells us. Well, this plan is not about cost cutting or personnel reduction exclusively. There are additional costs that I'm certain can come about, but these will be the responsibility of the town board when they develop and pass their budgets moving forward, and you'll get to elect the people that do that. It is true, I'd like to see a longer list of these ideas, but that work will happen after the fact. And thank you for talking about the interim committees and structures that will be set up.
Let's just be mindful, we have 8 minutes
Thank
left
you.
to get through all of us.
All right, I'm gonna end soon, but we've not done a lot of talking to the public, because we've allowed the hearing. And the last thing I'll just say is that, that I think the fiscal opportunity is not only about cutting taxes, and hedging risk, but it's about coordinating, aligning resources so that we can do more for our community. The town has used tax increases over the past 10 years to accumulate nearly 8 million in reserves and holds $12 million in cash on the balance sheet. The village has been more conservative, but still maintains a significant balance sheet of reserves. If we agree to come together, create a plan for how to use these resources, we could have more for this village and town that we care so much about. I'll stop there. I had more to say, but I'll share for another minute.
Yeah, we'll have time at the end. Just if we could kind of just highlight 1 or 2 things, if you want to go next and.
I'm just gonna super quickly, change tactics a little bit here. One of the biggest concerns that I've had throughout this whole process doesn't actually involve anything within the JCA itself. It's the timeline of everything. And I know that a lot of people here feel like maybe it feels very quick. Maybe you hadn't, known what was happening. I know that I didn't know anything about this until I had come onto the board in March, and ever since then, I felt particularly overwhelmed by everything. I feel like I have a much better grasp on everything. But I can understand where some of the people here, some of the people that wouldn't be able to make it tonight, would just feel very overwhelmed by the timeline of everything happening very quickly. I do think that you guys have the right to decide whether you want it or not, but I don't know if we have taken enough time to properly and thoroughly convince you on whether or not this is good or bad. And we also have a whole bunch of other voters that are coming in that have heard nothing about this. College students are going to be coming back, and some of them do have the opportunity to vote on this. And we have, we've got 2-ish months to teach them everything that we have had maybe 4 months to teach you guys about. And I wish that I knew how to better reach you guys, how to do better on my part, what we can possibly do. I am learning with you guys and, yeah, that's, again, my major concern is the timeline of all this. Whether or not this is a good idea or not, I feel like maybe we haven't had enough time to discuss this all together. I don't think 3 public hearings was enough. And I would love to see this place absolutely packed out, especially with people closer to my age. Since it's, you know, we've got a lot of, we have a lot more people in this town than are in this room right now, and I know that's a silly thing to say, but I wish that there were more people here. I wish more people knew about it right now. We're impassioned to speak about it and, yeah.
There's no silly thing to say. Thanks. I'll skip myself. Let's see what, 4 minutes-ish, so, town board. Who wants to kind of go on the town board that hasn't spoken quite as much? Let's see how many we can squeeze in and then move to the public comments and then get to the rest of us. And trustee Ross is on the Zoom and we'll make sure to get to him too.
I'll go. I'll take a stab at it.
I have
Cool. 1 to 2 things, yeah. Yeah.
Wanna go first, Lauren?
Okay, sure. Why are we consolidating? There's a shortage of people. Right now, I'm on the ZBA for the town. I've had a full board exactly 1 time for 6 months. No one is coming in to help us out. Okay, I'm glad all you guys are coming here today. That's great. We've had an opening on the ZBA for 6 months. We have 4 people, and whenever someone doesn't show up, we have 3. And when we have 3 people, you have to have an unanimous decision. Okay, so all of a sudden democracy disappears. I'm a huge fan of democracy. I like voting. I like voting how I want to. And when you have a situation where these quorums get low, which happens consistently, it becomes really rough. In 10 years, I've never had someone work their way up from being a alternative to a full member. We're supposed to have 7 people in each board. Okay, 2 of them are not supposed to be voting, they're supposed to be volunteering, learning the craft, figuring things out, taking some time, learning what they're supposed to do. That never happens at the town level or the village level. You are thrown in immediately and expected to vote. Okay, when I came in, that happened to me, it happened to every single person after me. Okay, so 10 years of history, the ZBA, the planning board and the town board or the village board are the 3 most important boards. This is not an unimportant board. It's critical. We are the judicial part of the zoning. If we make a mistake, it's really, really bad. So what happens is we have people coming in who are brand new, have absolutely 0 time to learn the craft, are thrown to the wolves because we don't have enough people. There's a shortage of people here. If you look at the people who attend these meetings, they fit a certain demographic. Why? Because all the people who are my age are busy. They're trying to raise their families, they're trying to work. Things have changed radically. Okay, it's hard to find people. When we put up a job posting, we don't get a lot of people showing up. And so what happens is, we've hit a situation where the democratic process is failing. The only person at this table who ran a contested election was Tim. 1 person. I ran,
That's not true.
well, oh, you did? Oh, I didn't know that. I'm sorry. You did in 2023? Okay, so, I apologize. Really? I didn't know. Sorry.
Town board? Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
2023.
We all have dates for 2.
But was it primary or the general?
Primary, there were 3 candidates.
And how many? Okay, so what's happened is, so we have 2. So there's 10 people sitting here, not 8 of us were basically steamrolled in. Okay, I ran against, I got the Democratic primary, I ran unopposed. Okay, no one opposed me. We had 1 Republican opposing 2 of us, he didn't win. And so what we have is we don't have a lot of people signing up for our jobs. They're just not here. We have a lot of people concerned about the police department, they come to meetings, they talk about it. We've had 2 people volunteer for that board, 2. We need 5, 7 people to be on that board. We've been trying to fill that position for months. Okay, months. And so what happens is we are at the executive level, we need to do something.
Sean, so did you have another topic besides volunteers to quickly
Yes,
move
I
on
did.
to? Yeah, and we'll get a chance to discuss this all. I just want everyone to name their one or two issues,
So
because
here's
we have
the-
1 minute before I want to move it to the
Okay.
public.
So I'll wrap it up real quick. Consolidation is not to save money. We did not go in there with the idea of saving money. I've never been involved with this for saving money. We are not doing this to fire people. We have to plow the streets. No one's gonna lose their job. They're doing a certain amount of work. They're gonna continue to do that certain amount of work. So this has never been about saving money. This has never been about firing people. It's never been about any of that stuff. This is about trying to streamline this part of the equation, the voting, the people who are volunteering and the people who are elected. It's not about the town. We still need to do all the services we did. None of those services are gonna disappear. So the people who are doing those services are still gonna be needed. That's it.
Thanks. And then Lauren, if you wanted to go, and then if the rest of us could just save our 1 to 2 for after public,
Quick note.
that'd be, Kitty, I'm gonna save mine for after public comment too, if you don't mind.
It's really up to the public. I mean,
Cause it's,
do you want to hear us or should we hear you, really?
well, it should be both.
Oh.
Yeah, but I did wanna, I said 7:30, so we'll do Alex time and do 7:30-ish. Yeah,
I wanted to talk about.
We wanna hear Kitty.
okay,
After Lauren, and I will be very quick. Thanks.
okay. Yeah, we'll just keep it brief.
My topics were the interim and transition periods and zoning. Out of the many important topics that residents brought up over the last 2 public hearings, one multifaceted topic that I thought I would speak to tonight is the concern that consolidation or removal of an invisible boundary between town and village could mean losing the village's charm or the character of the town outside it. We've heard this worry from both sides. Some village residents are afraid that once the village dissolves into the town, that identity gets absorbed and disappears. I get that fear. I certainly wouldn't want that to happen. Some town residents have a related but different worry that village zoning, which has recently approved several large apartment complexes to be built, will simply extend out into the rest of the town. Different starting points, same underlying fear that consolidation means drastic imposed change to what people currently have. I get it. Consolidation doesn't mean picking one zoning code and applying it across the board. It means a thoughtful process of considering both the village's zoning and the town zoning side by side and deciding deliberately and in public what gets kept, what gets replaced, and what gets written new going forward. Nothing about that process happens automatically. It happens because the board makes those decisions with hearings, the same kind of hearing that we're here at tonight. And good for you for all showing up. Maybe you'll get on some of our boards. Look at Gardner and Woodstock. Both are single municipalities with charming hamlet centers that have their own identity and character. What creates that feeling isn't frozen zoning code protected by a separate jurisdiction line. It's the ongoing relationship between the town board and the residents who keep showing up to shape them. The strongest safeguard either village or town residents have isn't which current zoning code technically applies to them. It's the relationship between the board and the people who show up, weigh in, and hold their elected officials accountable. That relationship and process exists whether we consolidate or not. The timeline shows how much room there is for engagement. If the referendum passes, and this speaks to something that was said earlier, there are 2 phases before any real zoning changes take effect. First, an interim period. The municipality will create a joint interim governance committee to guide the transition, meeting no less than monthly during the 2027 year. This committee shall include representatives of both the town and village. The group will integrate steps and actions outlined in this agreement. There is a lot more detail to that I will not go into right now. The temporary land use advisory board will be established, whose members will be knowledgeable of village land use codes, development frameworks, physical characteristics, and pending applications in front of the village planning board at the time of consolidation. Second, a transition period. The period beginning with the effective date of consolidation and ending 2 years after the date of consolidation. During this time, there will be deliberative process of updating the priorities and procedures of the combined zoning code. This is a multi-year deliberate process with multiple points along the way for residents on both sides of the current invisible line to weigh in and stay engaged with the many boards that make decisions before anything is finalized. Thank you for listening. Thank you, and thank you for serving as a volunteer on our planning board, because you bring a lot of expertise to this. So I submitted written comments, which, when the town gets up to speed with the village, will be available to all who can read. So I'm just going to quickly go through the points I've made. I believe that we have seriously underestimated the transition costs. I've said that so many times, but I want to get it in writing into the public consciousness. I came up with a revenue gap of about $896,000. And the CETC is designed to compensate with that $1 million for those gaps. So although we have 30 pages of finances, a lot of them are how much printers are worth and stuff like that. I would like to see a standalone chart that shows which lost revenue will be paid for out of the CETC and which other ones will have to be figured out some other way. The contract we signed with LaBerge was for $100,000. Village pays 25, town pays 25, the state gives us back 50,000. So we have some income to pay for that. I would delete the separate planning department that was not in the original dissolution document that was added in May of 2026. We do need to plan for more building and code inspection officers, and apparently we just need to plan for more staff all around. From what I'm hearing tonight, the departments are understaffed. I will need to have the fire department buy in to whatever it is we do going forward by August 5th. We could need to get that settled. I think we need to add a town manager salary. Everything everybody has been saying here means it's going to be a ton of work. Let's plan for that now. It's about 150,000 with benefits, could be more. Let's plan for it now, because I would be very sad to see that in a budget in 2026, 27, because we know about it now. And it sounds like we're going to be meeting once a month if the referendum passes. I don't know if that's enough, but I'm glad that we're anticipating at least that. We need to revise the personnel organizational charts. The comptroller's department only has 4 people, but it says 5. And we have a project manager / deputy clerk. If not in that chart, I don't know if that position is just combined into one, but you know, that person who signs on as project manager has been a big part of a lot of the work that needs to get done. So I just don't know where that position is going to go. And we have a simple solution to deal with the problem of our planning boards. We raised them to 7. Let's go back to 5.
Okay, real quick, Kate, did you want to add anything? 1 to 2, save it for later. Tim, did you have 1 to 2 things saved for later? Alan, did you want to share your 1 to 2 things now or later?
Later's fine.
Okay, and I'll save mine for after we hear from the public also, because it's a public hearing. So with that, just same rules of engagement as last time, but for those who weren't with us, we'll do 3.5 minutes. Please just try your best to keep your comments at 3.5 minutes. And Jasmine and Rich, Jasmine, did you want to start with time, or Rich, you felt your phone might? Okay, you're happy to do it?
My phone's good.
Okay, it's good. Okay, awesome. So look over to my right, your left, for help with some time guidance. If you've already made a couple comments during this whole process, please try to say something new. Just that's a practical request. We won't be holding anyone accountable to that. Don't worry. And make sure you step up so this microphone thingy can hear you, and make sure you say your name so our clerks can get it on the record. And again, this is about the draft joint consolidation agreement. So try to keep your comments to that. Try to direct them to the boards, because we're the ones taking notes and going to edit the document. And let's just keep it chill. So where is that? I know, sorry. Dylan, thank you. And I'll pass this down so you can get spelling right and whatnot. Yeah, so first we have Joe Miller and Paul Brown, you're on deck. And you're reminding me, I have a new umbrella stand I was gonna bring in. It would have been useful.
Hello, my name is Joe Miller, Vice President of New Paltz Fire Department Incorporated. This morning, the New Paltz Fire Company received correspondence from Emily Svensson and Lydia Slavy, attorneys representing the town regarding consolidation. The memo outlines information on how consolidation could impact our volunteer members. It will be reviewed by both our membership and the company's attorney. Currently, our members do not have a formal agreement with either the village or the town concerning fire services should consolidation be approved.
Thank you so much. Here, I'll make sure we get this written one in there. Paul Brown, you're up next, followed by Dylan Moscoso.
Not even close.
I got it, so I'm so sorry. Just Dylan is after Paul Brown.
Madam Chairman, I just wanted to say something at the time. First this, I got it down to 2 minutes and 43 seconds, but if I go a bit slow, it should be 3.
Thank
See how
you.
close we get, and it's new.
Oh,
I've said this
awesome.
before, and I've never repeated myself. One of the reasons cited for consolidating the village with the town is the New York State Citizen Empowerment Tax Credit. I was glad to hear it discussed tonight as being an important issue. It's referred to as the CETC. The $1 million credit was established as an incentive in 2010. Some officials, particularly those of the town government, have stressed the importance of this incentive. Yet, as the joint consolidation agreement shows, only 20 villages out of 555 in New York State have decided that this enticement or carrot for village dissolution is worth it. Evidence-based research has shown that most villages that chose dissolution were in financial difficulty and decline and needed the money. The CETC money was offered to sweeten the pot for the surrounding towns that absorbed those villages, as the town would absorb many of the expenses we heard about. That's why there's a differential impact financially. For those who chased after the carrot, what did they really get? Consider what has happened to the buying power of the $1 million that was first offered in 2010. Due to inflation and the rising cost of living, the buying power of that 1 million has shrunk by roughly 1/3 to less than $674,000. In another 15 years, the buying power of the original 1 million will likely have shrunk to less than $500,000. These numbers are based on the 2.7% average annual inflation rate since 2010. Won't surprise you to know the current annual inflation rate in the United States is 3.5%. You can track and calculate these changes in the US inflation calculator. Anyone chasing after this incredibly shrinking tax incentive called CETC is on a fool's errand. Final point. In 2020, the US Census Bureau reported the population of the village of New Paltz at 7,324. By 2025, the Bureau estimate has risen to 8,689. That is a population increase of 18.3% in just 5 years. The village of New Paltz is no hole in anyone's donut, as characterized by a number of your consultants and some public officials. It's a thoroughly offensive description. On the contrary, our village of New Paltz is the heart of our community. The residents of this vibrant and diverse village of New Paltz need and deserve their own form of representative government. Please don't vote to dilute their voice. All that you will accomplish in disincorporating the village is to consolidate power in the office of the supervisor of the town of New Paltz. That is neither wise nor judicious in our system of free and open democratic government, which depends on checks and balances. Thank you.
Thank you. Oh, yeah. If there's some time, like if you're on deck, come on up. And I would prefer if we kind of kept our clapping to a minimum and maybe sign language. Dylan M, you're next, followed by Roger R.
Dylan Moscoso, MOSCOSO, sorry for talking out of turn, it's a very hard name to say.
No, it's not. I just am tired.
So I have been following consolidation since it was dissolution, looking at the historical documents, and I have a lot of statements, questions, and concerns. I will share them after the fact, so please don't worry about taking notes because I have a lot. The first thing is working on a number of boards with housing, bicycle pedestrian infrastructure across the board with the climate. We need more studies and updated things to understand where we are and what we're doing. None of that has happened. Half of the boards I've been on haven't had an updated study since the first half of the 2000s. On top of that, services are already combined. So the benefits for this would be financial. I mean, there could be ways to make things run a little better, but right now, the town provides services to the village and vice versa. Dissolution and consolidation, as the prior speaker said, has been a means of escape for people in financial distress and a village to consolidate to ensure that they can keep running. We are not in this position, so we should not be rushing. We should be taking our due diligence and making sure people understand what's happening and making sure everyone could be engaged. There's no central municipal building. This one's falling apart, and the other one is a trailer with leaks in it. That's going to take more than 2 years, so we need to start that. There is no ability for student engagement, much less before they even vote for approving the referendum, but then in between that and the election, that's not enough time. I've been following this, it's been hard, and I live here. I used to be a student, I'm not anymore. The JCA states that it's desirable and in the public interest. How? Where does, like, the people who haven't been on the village for a long time, have you been given information or metrics to understand how this will benefit us? Because we don't have that information. There's a lack of historical review. If there has been, it has not been announced, and it's very hard to access these documents if you don't know what you're looking for. If you go to a referendum, there will be a 4-year waiting period. If they vote no, well, you will not be able to go back and actually bring it to the voters, which I would like to avoid. My whole thing is I'm for consolidation, push the vote until we actually do the job right. My one question I have is I've heard back and forth, laws expire after a number of years or they stay in place until they are repealed. I would like to know whether it's one or the other, if it's specific cases. With the whole dissolution thing, it should be an unrushed example of unity, and the final vote of the referendum should be a step further down the line. It should not be the first step. Consolidation will not improve, expand, or address service gaps, as the amount provided through the CETC or cost savings by getting rid of the village board, which is the main cost saving measure that's been kind of said, it's not going to fix anything. And according to comments by the board, with a 3% rise in taxes each year, the town would see the same amount as they would in the past in a year. I understand inflation counts and everything, but this would not benefit town residents. New Paltz is not a business. Consolidation is not a solution to a people shortage, and condensing boards will not help recruitment or retention. The village has worked on stipends for some of the boards. I think that's a solution. I think there are better ways to increase retention, and it's having more people on the board to do the work, not less. Thank you.
Thank you. Roger Walla, you're up, and Pierrette Barber, you're on deck.
Thank you for hearing me. I will sit.
Yes, have a seat at the table.
Thank you. I have heard about streamlining, but I'm concerned for whose benefit. Village and town workers will be forced to join a union they didn't choose, and they will be harmed. Why put valuable, experienced workers in this position? They run important things and are not expendable. As a former worker myself in my own field, I can speak on their behalf without fear of being fired. If only for the crucial sakes of village and town workers, this ill-planned consolidation should be abandoned. In addition, we are told that both the town and village are in good shape fiscally. So why are we going through a pointless merger? The real and fundamental problem with consolidation is trust, as Rose Rudnitsky has already said. I wish I could say that this planned consolidation by the supervisor takes New Paltz in the right direction, but I'm afraid it does not. It should be withdrawn and not put on the November ballot. Thank you.
Thank you. Pierrette, you're up next, and then Maggie Ramirez is on deck.
Good evening. Thank you for having me. My first question this evening I have is if in fact this proposed plan of consolidation's true intent is to consolidate the village with our town, why would you not blend the mayor and the village board into a unified government for the town of this new town of New Paltz? Otherwise, what you're really doing is dissolving the village with a possible tax benefit, possible being the operative word. We have heard repeatedly from village residents that they really value, trust, and respect the services of the mayor and the village board that they have elected. The mayor, Alex, was first elected to be a trustee of the village in 2019. Then our supervisor, then mayor, appointed Alex to be the deputy mayor in 2021. Then you became acting mayor, and this year you became our mayor. Why would you not continue to have her manage the community that she has dedicated her service to for the past decade? Why? This is a representative democracy, and I believe our electeds should continue to serve their citizens who elected them, whether or not we consolidate. Which brings me to the second question: why consolidate? I have heard no compelling reasons for the residents of New Paltz to spend upwards of $350,000, which we may or may not be able to offset if we get the non-guaranteed CETC payment. In this week's Facebook post that our supervisor made 4 days ago, he made a case for the state of our village and our town's financial health as being stable, solvent, and strong. So why risk that strength by incurring a $350,000 bill that we may need to have to pay for somehow? How are we going to pay for this if the CETC money does not come through? I've yet to hear an answer. And even if we do receive it, ultimately, we, the taxpayers, are paying that bill through our state taxes. The CETC money from New York State comes from us. So this begs the question, why consolidate? Who's really benefiting from this?
Thank you. Maggie Ramirez, and then Elizabeth Lee's on deck.
I'll speak from here as I did last time.
Sure.
I'm Maggie Ramirez, town resident. This proposed consolidation plan has been presented by select members of this committee and contracted individuals through rose-colored glasses, making it sound like it's the best thing that it could ever possibly happen in New Paltz. This despite the fact, and I repeat, it is a fact that there is absolutely no need for this plan whatsoever or consolidation of our town and village. We have a financially stable town and village, and there has never been a consolidation of this type in all of New York State, although we are wasting plenty of time and money on this unnecessary exercise. You have deceptively spin this plan as good for New Paltz by deceptively stating that it's going to reduce taxes for everyone. And you also claim New York State is just waiting, despite all the shortfalls of the New York State budget, that they are waiting to give $1 million every year to New Paltz for the significant financial shortfall that all of you will create in the village by completely implementing this unnecessary plan. What this plan will do is create chaos, discontent, financial instability, and will create what will be an unresponsive bureaucracy and will destabilize New Paltz finances. If taxes are not high enough now in New Paltz, you just wait and see what this will do to our future taxes and what the future for our children will be to be able to live in New Paltz. Yes, the businesses of New Paltz and the landlords who own 70% of the properties in the village of New Paltz will enjoy a financial windfall, making even more money and earning a greater profit. In fact, there are individuals on both these boards who have a direct financial interest at the highest level with the passage of this plan. It is an obvious conflict of interest. Why all of you have not previously insisted on those directly benefiting financially to recuse themselves from the discussion of this plan or for pushing for this approval is shocking to all the residents of New Paltz and really makes everyone question what the real incentive behind this plan is. Again, this has been very deceptively presented through rose-colored glasses. However, thankfully, it's not too late. You can still say, hey, maybe we should rethink this. After all, there's no need for it. There's no urgency. It will benefit very few. It will cost a ton of money to implement, and it will forever alter New Paltz, hurting the majority of New Paltz residents, both in the village and in the town. As we said earlier, table this. Do what is best for the majority of New Paltz, not for a few egotistical, power-hungry, developer-friendly landlords who will forever change the trajectory of what we love about New Paltz. Don't let the changing of the guards destroy what took 349 years to build. Table this plan.
And then, so after Elizabeth leaves, we have Leonid Polishik on deck.
Okay, my name is Elizabeth.
You have to just make sure that this does pick you up, so come as close as you're comfortable. You can sit down, but if you can project, that would be awesome. Thank you.
Okay. My name is Elizabeth Lee. I'm a resident in the village of New Paltz. And I have two questions. You have the JCA fiscal analysis summary. Is that related to the village expenses? Is that the summary? Is that related to the village?
I don't have it open right now, but yeah.
That's one question.
So we'll address these questions in our discussion afterwards. Yeah, if you don't mind.
All right. And also the other question is what about the citizen empowerment tax credit? I wanted to know if, we'll get that $1 million annually. However, with the cut in funding, which would impact the state fund, budget, which would impact us locally, will that $1 million continue to come in annually or and for how long?
So that's in perpetuity for as long as it exists.
Suppose it.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Which document?
Tell the word. The answer is, don't use perpetuity. Don't use perpetuity.
Crap.
If it's voted every year.
Wait for
then
your
you
comments.
might get it.
So, we can include those in public comments and stuff. I just want to know which document you were looking at. Because all these should have village and town stuff on them. This was C27. Yeah, so,
This is related to the village?
it's related to, so it writes like the village's share of blah, blah, blah. And then that means it is the village. And then there are some lines about TOV on any of these docs, like throughout all of these documents, it means town outside village. So sorry about not putting that note on here. That could be an edit for the next round of printing, to be honest, because I realized that was confusing. Yeah. Okay.
Thank you.
So then we had Leonid Polishik and then John Ordefelli is on deck. Oh, yeah, so the microphone has to pick you up if you want to make a comment.
They can speak.
No, but we do need.
We need you on the big screen.
For the records.
Yeah, for the records. I go home and I watch this over again because there's stuff I miss, and so I think everyone else does. So go for it.
I come here because I have a question about zoning. I still didn't get what will happen with zoning. for difference between town and village zone. What will happen with town zoning? Because as it was told, about 70% of village, it is landlocked. I believe that about 90% of town are residents who value their environment. And if this zoning start fluctuating, I understand that, I heard that you told that it will be period of change, discussion, but I don't feel very prudent that this discussion will take in consideration people who live in town. And in general, I agree with comments that benefits are questionable and danger are real.
Thank you. And we'll definitely be making sure to address as much of this, afterwards, to be clear. John O was next, and then Neil Batez is on deck.
John Orpatelli.
Just make sure the mic picks you up.
I think it'll pick me up. I'm gonna talk. I want everyone to be able to hear this. This is a letter to the editor, Mike Musso wrote, July 15, HB1, the perpetual tax credit isn't a promise, it's a budget line. I thought this was great. Supporters of consolidating the village and the town of New Paltz point to the prize, a citizen empowerment tax credit of roughly 1 million a year paid in perpetuity. Before that figure decides anyone's vote, residents deserve a clearer picture. The CETC is not part of Article 17A of the municipal law, which governs consolidation itself. It lives in the state financial law, and the money is available only subject to annual New York State appropriations. The legislature decides each year whether to fund it. It is a budget line, not a promise. The LaBerge Group, which wrote our draft joint consolidation, knows this. In 2022, in a presentation for the village of Fort Johnson, it told residents the CETC is contingent upon annual New York State appropriation and is not a guarantee. In their work for Pauling, they noted the credit was cut 20% in 2020 to 2021 and urged communities not to base consolidation decisions solely on a potential tax cut or grant. But in the New Paltz plan, that warning shrinks to one footnote. Funds paid annually in perpetuity, subject to annual New York State appropriations. But in perpetuity and subject to annual appropriations cannot be both true. There is good reason to doubt the CETC program's longevity. More than half of New York's towns have no village to merge with and get nothing. How long before their legislatures tire of subsidizing a neighbor's tax break they can never receive? Add budget pressure and the credit becomes an easy target for defunding. If consolidation is worth doing, it should be judged on governance, not on this tax credit. And this is especially relevant for the town residents outside the village, since for them, without the tax credit, consolidation is projected to raise taxes. Thank you.
Thank you. Followed by Neil is Chris Marks.
So as someone who lives in the village and worked for the town and had been on a village commission for maybe 13 years. Now I'm on a town commission as well. I'm also on a county commission, and I work with municipalities, hundreds of them throughout the state. I think I have a very unique perspective on this. And I want to say that I worked with Tim for 8 years when he was the mayor and I was town supervisor. And this is a topic we started talking about 10 years ago. This isn't something Tim is bringing up now because he wants power. This is something that we have been talking about for a decade. And it's not something Tim is trying to do for money or power. It's about what's best for the entire town, not just the village voters, and not just the town outside the village. I also don't think people realize that the town board, really, most of what they do is about town-wide, not just town outside the village. People don't understand that. About the only thing in the town that really focuses on town outside the village is the building department. Almost everything else is what's good for the entire town. And what we really want to do is do what's best for the entire town. And even though we worked with the village board and I got along with Tim and the rest of the village board, there were many times things came up where we had disagreements about what was best for the town outside town and what was best for the village. And with consolidation, the focus will really be on what is best for all of the residents of the entire town. It's not just about money, it's about efficiency and what's good for all of us. That's why I'm in favor of it and why I think people, yes, people want this to be more open for them to read about. All of this information is on the website for a while. If you don't know what you're talking about, spend some time reading it. Learn about it as much as you can and vote. I'm in favor of it. I hope people learn what they need to learn before November. Thank you.
Thank you. Chris, you're up, and then Abby Green is on deck.
I stand here, keeping my back to people. Good evening, Chris Marks, Town of New Paltz, been a 62-year resident for the town of New Paltz, a 15-year elected official. I also serve the distinction of actually being one of 3 people that I'm aware of that's worked for the town and the village as employees. Granted, it's been a long time since I worked for the village, it was 1983. This is not a plus for consolidation or a negative consolidation, it's something for the board to consider. Looking at the paperwork, and it's hard to follow all the graphs. Part of my concern was that there'll be a hamlet in the village, and the DPW, as it stands now, will stick where it is with their employees going north. Speaking from somebody who's merged departments, I'm the only one that I'm aware of that's ever merged any department within the town. It's a nightmare. It's not easy. And I merged 2 town departments, actually 3 town departments together. It's taken years to sort that out and make it work. It works well now. But splitting the workforce is a bad idea. You all have to work together. You have to use everyone's talents. You all have to show up at the same door, walk out the same door, and put as much into the job as you possibly can. When you start separating, I've lived this for many years. What do they do? How come they're doing it? There starts distrust. You think we're all adults, but it always comes up. Again, it's not a plus for consolidation or a negative, and I have the highest respect for all municipal employees and all the volunteer employees. But consolidation, if you're not going to consolidate as a taxpayer, why do it? It's just something to consider. It's a second building. And as I said, we don't have a building in New Paltz that doesn't have a leaky roof. We don't have a building in the town, the village of New Paltz, which doesn't need major renovation or repair. That includes the new police department. So, you know, there's problems everywhere. But cutting down on our old infrastructure is a plus. Now, merging departments and using a workforce over the years has enabled me to do off-road projects and do projects where normally highway departments wouldn't do, cutting in water lines, building things at sports parks. Once they're built, that's the easy part. I mean, the maintenance of them is the impossible part. You need to add workforce. Again, it's not a plus or minus, it's just something to consider. If you're going to consolidate, then consolidate. Everyone has to be together. If we're not going to do it and we're going to split up, again, as a taxpayer, as an administrator, as an elected official, I don't see it working. Thank you.
Thanks, Chris. Abby Green, you're up next and then followed by Susan Stessen.
Good evening, and thank you to the boards for the opportunity to speak. My name is Abby Green. I've lived in New Falls for 22 years, and I'd like to provide my perspective as a village resident. Before we permanently surrender our own government, we deserve more than projections, intentions, and best efforts. Ask yourself one simple question. What exactly is guaranteed? We've heard repeatedly that services won't change, taxes will go down, village character will be preserved. But when you read the JCA itself, those promises become something much different. The JCA says departments are intended to continue operating in substantially the same manner, that the town will make best efforts to protect employees and harmonize compensation, and it will work to update plans and preserve representation. These are not guarantees or enforceable commitments. The fiscal section is equally candid. It tells us this is only a point in time model, that future town boards, not this agreement, will decide future spending and tax rates. So notwithstanding any perpetual protected tax grants or subsidies, no one here tonight can guarantee what taxes or services will look like 5 years from now or beyond. Additionally, the JCA creates a temporary land use advisory board, but its recommendations are expressly non-binding. For a community that has long valued local planning and historic preservation, village residents should understand that the proposed advisory board would not have decision-making authority. What is guaranteed is that the village boundary will no longer exist, and that is permanent. Once it is gone, once the village is gone, there is no easy way back. If in 5 years taxes are higher, services are different, village priorities receive less attention, you cannot simply vote to recreate your village government. This is not a budget, it's not a contract for a year, it's a permanent restructuring of our local democracy. Remember, we're not voting on what this board will do, we're voting on what every future town board will be allowed to do after the village no longer exists. Consider also that the village is not simply a taxing district. It is the historic, walkable heart of our community, developed around a particular pattern of streets, neighborhoods, businesses, and public spaces that has been carefully managed for generations. The infrastructure that serves that community, water, sewer, roads, land use, is what shapes future growth. Once those decisions are made by a town government, village residents lose their independent voice over the very infrastructure that determines how and where future development occurs. Finally, the village exists because the center of New Paltz has different planning needs than the surrounding town. The village has a traditional downtown, historic neighborhood,
Your time is up when
sidewalks.
you're ready.
I have 1 minute.
No, you don't.
I mean, can I go on just for a minute?
No, we'd like you to wrap up.
Start wrapping up, please.
Okay.
You went on forever. Yeah, you can have my time. She can have my time.
At any rate, the issue here is whether one government with one set of political priorities can adequately protect both the town and the village, each of which has distinct concerns and needs. And that issue, I think, is bigger than taxes, bigger than organizational charts, bigger than mere aspirations, and certainly too big for a rushed vote on a consolidation project with so many unknowns and the only certainty being the dismantling of the village government. Thank you.
Thank you, Eileen. Just a reminder, if people follow up with their comments in writing, that way you can make whatever points you can tonight. And then make sure you send even more our way. So yeah, Susan, come on up. Tom Denton, you're gonna be on deck.
Just wanted to say a couple.
Just make sure this is picking you up, please.
It would be on the screen, but you have to get close enough. How come this one?
Some people just have that kind of projection. I don't have it.
That's right.
We're all aiming for this. You're fine.
Anyway, just a couple of things I wanted to say. As town historian, I've obviously done research and looked at our town through hundreds of years, and actually next year is the big year of our anniversary, which I'm excited about. I think the last couple of years, we've seen some dramatic changes to our village, to what it looks like with all the big giant monster Left Rack City or whatever we're calling Route 32 now. I'm concerned about kind of moving too fast. I'm not giving too many opinions, but I think like I'm just learning about it now, about some of this. So I wish we had more time. My other issue, which is a big one, is that right now there are over 7,100 college students. I don't know how, like they're transient. These people come here, most of them decide not to live here, go back home, and they're gonna get to vote. And I don't know how we can actually get to have them hear these things that are going on. And it's a real concern of mine. That could be thousands of votes. So from people that don't know about what's going on. So that's a big concern of mine.
Thank you, Susan. Tom, come on out. And then on deck will be Lou Carriola.
Tom Denton, Town of New Paltz. I've been following the issue of consolidation for over a year. I've attended hearings and informal meetings, read documents, and listened carefully to candidates in last fall's election campaign when they explained their different positions on consolidation. This is an issue that has been part of public discussion for many years in New Paltz. It's not new. What is new in the debate is the award from New York State of $1 million available to towns and villages that do undertake consolidation, and it has potentially significant benefits for residents. I do support the consolidation of the town and village. I know there's an element of uncertainty about the processes and consequences. Change can be unnerving. I know some people look at the new apartments on Route 32 and say that developments harm the character of the village. I look at them and I recognize that the corridor has a different feel, but I also know that we desperately need new housing. I do trust our elected officials' repeated intentions to protect the livelihoods of village and town employees with a minimum of disruption. I know from public comments that some residents do not. I do trust the daily experience of people who work in and with government and who believe that consolidation will benefit taxpayers and maybe more importantly will help officials use their time more effectively with better results. I don't have that kind of experience. Few of us do. Some have said that there hasn't been transparency and information isn't available. Some have noted that many residents don't use Facebook. I don't, or can't use the internet. Where do residents get their information from about community affairs and specifically this consolidation proposal? Unfortunately, in these hearings, I've heard some misstatements of fact. Our local paper, Hudson Valley One, has included much reporting on the issue, and it's available not only online, but also in newsprint in local stores. Residents can go to the Elting Library and be set up to read the 65-page document on the computer. Most important to me, I urge the village trustees and the town board members to vote positively to put the consolidation issue before the voters in November's election. We don't need another year to study it. We will have 3 more months to read it, read about it, ask our officials questions, go to other forums, and cast our ballots. Ultimately, that is where this issue belongs, in the hands of town and village residents. Thank you.
Thanks. Next is Lou Carriola and then Jim McPadden's on deck.
I'm sorry, you okay? Yeah, I'll make it. Okay, great. Thank you.
Oh, gosh.
Well, I'm sorry, I have not gone to other meetings. There was always a reason and I couldn't make it. It was probably a year ago, the only one I went to. But I had a question. about how many towns in this state have consolidated, and I think this young lady said 50?
No,
Zero.
Zero.
Oh, zero.
Many have dissolved.
Why wouldn't other towns do this? Is
18
there a reason? I would think so.
18 have dissolved, most of them were like 500 or less people.
No, that's not true. There's about 25 that have dissolved since 2011. And they're
So,
all.
we
let's
saying
allow- let's allow Lou to speak, thanks.
So there are none?
No consolidations have occurred in the state of New York.
Correct.
There have been how many dissolutions, Tim?
I mean, I've shared it numerous times. There's about 25 communities that have dissolved since 2011 and are therefore receiving the Citizens Empowerment Tax Credit.
If they dissolve, do we know the reasons why they dissolve?
Eight of them are, eight of them are.
Let's
So
just
why
hear
are
your
we
comments,
doing
we'll
this?
discuss it later, yeah, or the board
That's
will
my
discuss.
question. Are we trying to?
There's a bunch of one-pagers you can read.
Let him speak, please.
And I'll tell you. But this previous young lady said about high buildings going up. I remember I was a kid in Brooklyn. And I saw these single-family homes put down street after street, and these projects coming up 40, 50 stories high. It changes the whole damn atmosphere of an area. I'm opposed to any consolation. And especially because we've had apparently in the state, but they've dissolved. My question was gonna be if there were some, have we looked into them? Did we contact them, get their feelings for whether it was good or bad? I guess they weren't that great. Thank you.
Thanks, Lou. Okay, Tim is next. And then Susan, he is on deck.
All right, Jim McFadden, I am a town resident, and I'm here tonight to speak in favor of the consolidation. I understand there's a lot of emotions. I try and cut through that. I try and look to what the benefit is. I think town-wise, it's much better for everybody in the town and the village. The village gets lower taxes, there's a chance I might get lower taxes. My taxes have shot through the roof every year for 10 years. It's just insane, the amount of taxes we pay. So if there's a chance for me to lower my taxes or my taxes to even stay where they are, that'd be great. I understand the CETC program is a line item budget and can be done away with in the future, but it's been around for 15 years. And best I can see, Google searches looking through the state, no one's complaining trying to get rid of it. I think that $700,000 towards taxes is a huge benefit, and it might not even affect me, but I still think it's worth it. And $300,000 to put towards programs that we have in this town is totally worth it. We need, it's just income for us, not income, but putting towards programs is a win. So our taxes have risen for 10 years. The chance to stay the same would be great. I think it streamlines services. I think there's we have a lot of duplicate jobs and positions, and we're streamlining services without losing any jobs. That is huge. I worked for the city of Poughkeepsie. I was a union president. I worked on negotiating committees, and the fact that you're talking about consolidation, which means everyone is staying, we're not losing any jobs, and kudos to you for honoring collective bargaining agreements and all union contracts in this consolidation. I think that is positive. That is a huge thing. A huge win. I just think that overall, I think it's better. Streamlining services will work. If there's a chance to ease taxes, we should take it. I don't think that the program is going away anytime soon. It looks like it's, there's no one negative talking about it, trying to pull it off. So that's all I have.
Thanks. Susan, come on up. And then that's it for what was written down, but don't worry, there's time for everyone.
I think I've been to 3 out of 4 of these meetings. And at this point, I've become very mistrustful of you. I think that's the biggest issue is that we don't talk about ourselves. I don't trust you. Why, you might wonder. Well, 2 meetings ago, you said you put out postcards. There were none. Because I heard at the end of the last meeting, you couldn't figure out how to find stamps to pay for the postcard. And, you know, if you can't do that simple thing, I know that there were flyers placed around town. And I know those were placed by community members because there was no faith that you would actually do it. All these little things add to mistrust. Not having everybody know that these meetings are happening in some way other than the internet or going to, I think it should have been plastered because it's a big deal. Last time I was here, you said every 5 statements you would respond. What happened between that agreement of last time? That was agreed, I was right here that you said, Alex, oh, next time we will have a response after. Are you elected? Please don't shake your head no to me when you're not even elected. I'm not even sure you should be sitting there. So I think it would be better, and I think that you might possibly want us to leave before the questions are answered, and that makes me also mistrustful. And my third statement is with the consolidation of power to the newly elected town supervisor, how much is the increase of your salary? My second question is,
I took a salary decrease to
my
be the
second
supervisor.
question is,
So your rhetorical question,
As-
I'm answering it. A
okay,
decrease to be the town supervisor.
how much are you going to pay the village manager? Because there's no way as a supervisor.
There's not a single village manager or town manager in Ulster County.
No, but it was written up in the paper, that that's what was going to happen.
Yeah.
All right, so that's it for our written signed up comments, but if folks still want to make comments, you can come up and just make sure our clerks know who you are so we can get it right for the record in an orderly fashion. And then we'll get back to the boards going through our 1 to 2 issues and working through this. Come on up.
I got here late.
I saw you walk in, yeah.
Yes. I found nothing in that document that indicates to me that the level of services that we get in the village will be there when and if this goes through. Anytime there seems to be a problem, whether it be trees down, whether they're plowing snow on Christmas Eve, they are there. Broken water main in the middle of the night, they are there to get it done. And the second thing is that carrot of the $1 million. I said it last time, $1 million is not a lot of money. It's the value of maybe 2 or 3 houses. Don't let that carrot entice you to vote for this. I myself have not been proven with enough information to satisfy my agreement with letting this pass through. Thank you.
Thanks, Len. Anyone else who wants to come speak, come on up.
My name is Lee Rice. I just have a question, sort of a rhetorical question. If it wasn't for the $1 million CEPC, would this be promoted still?
Short and sweet. Thank you. Anyone else? Come on up. Okay, so, we are keeping the public comment period for writing, so written comments are still accepted to either the village clerk or town clerk or both through 5 p.m. on this coming Monday. And so so send your comments in. So
But we do need to close the oral comment period,
Okay,
the public hearing.
okay, right, so,
Let's just keep it open until the end of this week, right, until we finish talking.
It's part of the record what the board discusses, but the public hearing is now finished, right? We've heard from the public.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, and then there's no way to like motion on Monday at 5, so,
We can respond.
yeah, but we're gonna, if anyone leaves the table, don't leave the table, you know? Or does it matter, I guess? I wanna make sure I don't miss that motion.
Everything should be in one package.
Yes, but the board will discuss, and that will be part of the record for sure. The question is just if we're finished with the public hearing.
Yeah, I mean, so I could make the motion, we can get a second and then discussion, we continue our discussion and then make sure we don't leave here without closing the public hearing, right?
At the end of the meeting.
Or we can do it at the end.
Close public comment or close the public hearing?
So this process is prescribed by state law and we have to follow the state law. That's what I'm trying to make sure we do. So we opened the public hearing 3 meetings ago. This is the last session of the public hearing, so we need to close it. We can close it, but leave the written comment open until a set date. But we do need to close the hearing. That the board will still have every opportunity to discuss, and then the board will, you know, discuss further and vote at the next meeting. But we have to follow these processes to be in compliance with state law.
Yeah, so I mean, like, we can either just close the hearing part now or at the end, just you have to all make sure I don't forget to do that at the end. I'm cool with bookending it and saving for the end. I do want to make sure that we, so just make sure I don't forget that part, please. I do want to make sure we do get to finish the first go around with all the electeds, with it was supposed to be 1 or 2 bullet points, of things that we've heard that we think need to be addressed in this JCA. So then we can kind of get into whether or not they are things that we should be adding in or tweaking in the JCA, in the next few days, or if it's something that's kind of like, extra, yeah. So, trustee Ross is on Zoom, and I know had, some specific bullet points to share, so. Alan, do you want to share?
Sure, am I audible?
We can hear you, thank you, and we can see you too, good to see you.
Great. I was going to talk about zoning and planning, land use, but I think that was covered pretty well by Lauren. I do want to make a quick comment about the idea that there's a village and a town, and there's an oppositional relationship between the residents of the village outside the town, the village. I think that's inaccurate. I think that pretty much everybody that lives in the town, which of course includes the village, has very similar desires to protect this wonderful natural environment that we live in, and also to protect a very walkable, safe, vibrant village. I don't think there's this big oppositional thing within the voters, particularly when it comes to renters. So there's been a few comments about renters and even college students having somehow being in a force that is not aligned with the larger community, or the more, I don't know, the property owning community or something like that. I think it's pretty much self-evident that everybody that lives in the village wants a clean, safe, walkable, well-run place to live with an easily accessible government. That's just common sense. So I think there's one other point there, which is that when we talk about the village not being represented, the village government going away, not being represented, I think there's we are still the people who elect the town government. We are still the people who volunteer for the town boards. We're still the people that advocate and come to meetings and make our voices heard. It's not as though there's some separate town government that we won't be part of and that we aren't part of now. So I think that's also a sort of an angle that I just think is I don't know, I think it just seems inaccurate to me. In this transition period and process, the village, which they were town residents, we were village, and I live in the village. We will have, we will contribute and drive things in the way we want them to go. The town's not going to take over and dismiss us because we are the town. Anyway, those are my thoughts. Thank you.
Thanks, Alan. And then on the town side, I guess whoever wanted to go next, go for it.
I just have a couple of quick things. One is largely the same as what Alan just said. I live in the town outside the village. I have a stake in the village thriving and maintaining its character, and I feel pretty confident that the village has a stake in the town outside the village community continuing to thrive. We are not at odds with each other. We need each other. And integrating governments will make that more possible and will make it more clear that we are one municipality, that we support each other, that we are invested in each other and inextricable. The other minor issue, maybe it's not minor issue, the other bullet point I wanted to talk about was an issue that I know came up with the school board, and I just wanted to talk about it on the record a little bit. Other people who do more can weigh in also, but there was a concern raised about the NYSERDA grants going away because if the village no longer exists, because the village is considered or tracts of land are considered in economically disadvantaged communities that enable some of the schools in New Paltz to access those grants. Understandably concerning to think that some grants might go away for our schools. This was clarified, and again, if anybody who knows more wants to weigh in, that it's not because the village exists as a government entity that we are eligible for those grants in those locations. It's because of census tracts. So that will remain true regardless of consolidation or not. That's it.
Sweet. Do you want to?
Yeah, I just wanted to, excuse me, partly because I felt like I was pointed at in those comments. I just want to talk a little bit about what we have done on communications. We did have a meeting where there were many ideas thrown out, where postcards were discussed. There was no decision made to send postcards. And when we looked at the money involved in sending them out in the time frame that we had, and getting approvals across two different organizations, that felt like too much to do before this meeting. We still have the opportunity to get that message out between now and November, where we do have time. We've got lots of communications and not much else will change, and people can go and learn all the things. I've been through an exhaustive process of looking at where are all the places we can communicate. I love the idea of splashing it all over the place. I would love to know where one can splash it. We've been on the radio. We've been on every notice board. I've wandered personally to every notice board that exists within the town and put the signs up. I've created myself the posters that say this is an important meeting. These are the key dates. I've put them on the website. I've reorganized the town website. I've reached out to other organizations like the Democrats, other organizations to get to their communities. So that they have it. The police have put posters out. The police have put things on social media. I've created social media images that can be put out on social media so people can share them and pass them around. So the reason I was shaking was because there has been a lot of effort, and I feel very personally that I have put a lot of effort into getting the message out. And we have done it on every single property that the town and I can't speak to the village, but in the town, we put these communications everywhere we can. If there are places we have not done it, please let me know, because I would love to use any channels for communication that I can use between now and the vote in November to get this information into the hands. There is nowhere in this town to splash everywhere. I would love to know what that looks like. We cannot put stuff on telegraph poles, that is illegal. We cannot, there are lots of places we cannot put things on other people's property. We have done stuff with the businesses that we have relationships with. We've put stuff in Dedrick, we've put stuff in Dry Fly, we've put stuff in all the places we can find. But please, if there is somewhere we've missed, please let me know.
Thanks. Did you, okay, cool. And then Tim, did you have one or two bullet points?
Yeah, sure. So, I could share that the JCA is intentionally, conservative language. You know, this is a framework for the Department of State. You know, you absolutely cannot require or handcuff future boards to do certain things. That's why the language is intentionally conservative. What we've tried to relay to the community is that this plan does, you know, speak to protecting and preserving services and staff. And I think to answer your question, Lee, about like, does it make sense for this community to end up with one board instead of two, even without the CETC? Absolutely. You know, having served as the village mayor for 10.5 years and having sat at Village Hall or Town Hall for half a year, I continue to be just blown away on how often residents go to Village Hall or Town Hall or call the different offices seeking answers to questions or you know, responses for services, and they have to be redirected to a different building because most of the people in this community do not understand the difference between the town and village. You know, the gentleman was talking about how zoning would be impacted. You know, zoning wouldn't be impacted at all unless this community did a townwide comprehensive plan. And also this fear that, you know, we're gonna have LaFreck City, you know, all over the place. And, you know, we have an affordability crisis, we have a housing crisis, you know, we have real problems. And it's not just New Paltz, like we need to make sure that, you know, we're addressing the fact that people need to live in communities. And it makes the most sense from an economic standpoint, from a green standpoint, from a building community standpoint, that people should live within, you know, areas like villages. And the fear that, well, you're gonna have all this sprawl and all this building and all these you know, unsavory LaFreck, Regal Park, or any other, you know, Queens neighborhood that you want to disparage. That will not happen because there's no municipal utilities that will go to the town outside the village. You know, the effort for the last decade during my time in office, it has been focused on addressing maintenance issues to take care of what you already have. That is what a responsible government should do. There's also like legislation that has existed in New York State since 2012 that we should not be taking grant money and creating new sprawl when we have decades and decades and decades of deferred maintenance. What communities should be doing, if you are successful enough to get any sort of grant money, is applying it to services, utilities that need to be updated, whether it's water and sewer. That is the priority. That should only be the priority. So this fear that the community's character and the town outside the village, you know, where we're going to have apartment buildings is just completely not a thing that could ever happen. And I also think that we do so much as far as town and village staff. And again, because I have actually sat in the seats and I work with the staff and I see what is required to perform these funding formula arithmetic gymnastics to make sure that the revenues are being shared this way, the expenses are being shared this way. This occupies a very significant amount of staff time. those savings are absolutely not baked into any of these financial models. The reason that you run, the goal would be to run a more efficient government is because you would remove some of that stuff. And like local government is lean and mean and under-resourced. If you can have the same number of staff and actually, have them take on a variety of different jobs just on what they're doing now. Like, why do we have in the town outside the village, we have staff who, do water and sewer billing. And we also have staff in the village who do water and sewer billing. You can have one team do that. And you don't have the luxury of then saying, well, we don't need these people. We can therefore lay them off. Absolutely not. There's no fat on this bone. You need all the staff that are here to perform those tasks and many other tasks that are needed. And this, I think, straw man argument that the only communities that have dissolved historically are ones that are in financial disarray. That's absolutely true. And that's exactly why we should be doing this now while we are in a position of financial strength. Because when you're in a position of financial strength, you are doing things like, again, the conservative language in the JCA, it speaks to, well, the town outside the village might have to absorb the village debt. However, you don't have that situation here. You have a situation where the village debt is methodically and regularly paid down. And you can look at what has happened even during the last couple of years since this point in time financial model was crafted. And the village debt situation is super healthy. If anything, if we continue along this path in a year from now, there will be zero village debt in the general fund. And there will be some town outside the village debt. So if anything, town outside the village residents will be passing on their debt to the village residents. So it's the opposite of the conservative language that is in the JCA. And I think the other thing that's super fascinating about what exists in New Paltz is you have a B fund, that's the town outside the village, that has a fund balance. You have a village general fund that has a fund balance. So even at the end of the day, if you were to default, or not default, but choose not to make a debt payment, that that money continues to be in the fund balance. So even if you didn't make even if you gave the debt to the town, you would also be giving the fund balance to the town. So net, there's no change. There's no this fear mongering of the conservative language that's in the JCA is not applicable in this situation because we are looking at the situation from a position of strength, not a position of, we're worried about, our hand being forced. Because if you were worried about your hand being forced, then you would actually have to create special districts and actually spend money on the formation of special districts to silo those debt pieces so it is equitable. We don't have that situation here. We have a situation that's very straightforward. Again, to Neil's point, the town government is already responsible for managing town governmental services townwide. And what you have in the village is you have a village building department and a town building department, and those two will sit next to each other. And the zoning districts do not even have to change. There's no change whatsoever in the zoning districts, again, unless you choose to do an updated comprehensive master plan. And this community has a long track record of we want to make sure we're preserving the community outside of the village, maintaining the sensibility of our the things that we value as historical, maintain the values that we have because we want environmentally protected and preserved open space. All of those things would continue. So to answer your question, would I support consolidation without the CETC? 100%. And the numbers support that. The numbers support that. There will be a fewer taxes to be paid in the village, and a minimal increase in the town on that worst case scenario. And that worst case scenario would have to involve 25 communities across the state all of a sudden having the rug being pulled out from under them, even though they've been getting the CETC for 20 years. And the Department of State budget line is much more significant than they're even putting out now. So it's not even a very significant amount, and it absolutely is a material amount of money. $1 million when you have a combined tax levy of $14 million is absolutely a material amount of money. And I think it's so prudently irresponsible for anyone to suggest that you do not move forward with like trying to secure that money. If that's your proposal, you know what, you know how you'll definitely not get that money is by not applying for it. And the idea of you know, being so wealthy and not caring about affordability broadly in this community, you know, I'm gonna, you know, use this word. It's a boomer mentality that is really offensive and problematic and will harm this community in the long haul. That's my 2 things.
I was like, wow. Gosh, so I guess I should say a few things too, and then we'll see what we can all pick apart together. And of course, because I rushed half of us earlier, you know, if people have more than 2 things, we can make sure those get addressed too. I did want to make a point of clarification that it's come up a few times, this idea that village departments are understaffed, and they aren't. We can talk about, you know, beefing them up with a different kind of budget and a different scenario, but you know, Nancy in particular wanted me to make sure I address that this time around, because that's not the case. When I started in this mayor role, you know, in the building department, I remember Mike was like, wow, you know, there's almost nothing to do. And we've even added 2 staff to that department. And they're busy, there's lots to do, but I think that's just one example of many that we don't have any understaffed departments. You know, and to kind of reflect something that Tim was saying, both municipalities are coming at this from a point of strength. You know, like, sure, our infrastructure is failing, but that's the tune for every single municipality under the sun, and we're making it work. You know, it was hard to come up with like 2 things that I've heard in public comment that I wanted to address, because I'm realizing that a lot of the biggest concerns that I share, that I've heard many from the public, are relevant, like in everything that we do. Yes, like there are lenses that we should look at, like affordability, you know, and justice and fairness and getting the same kind of service for all, right? But those are things that are actually like extra from this JCA, because right now we're being tasked with making this plan that's for a governance structure for, you know, if voters decide to do something. So there's a lot of stuff that we just can't really include in there, because it's like drafting a constitution. It's not like, you know, anything bigger or smaller than that, right? So I heard so much the past few hearings that a lot of the community, like me, is really hyper-focused on affordability and housing justice, and just affordability has been the drumbeat. You know, it's the economy, stupid, constantly, right? I keep hearing that, you know, we all share concerns about access to responsive, caring local government entities. We rely on these for assistance with all of these issues. And that will be a problem, like no matter what, that a community like ours that is a SUNY host community, just all the things that make New Paltz, those are gonna be issues, I think, no matter what kind of government we have. And, you know, again, they do matter in this conversation, but they're kind of outside the JCA, right? So the fight for local laws that protect tenants and promote affordability for all, it will be a fight with or without consolidation. There's no promise within consolidation that good cause eviction will be applied to town outside village residents. And that's not for the JCA to even address, right? It's a separate fight, it's a separate conversation. You know, it won't make a difference. Like people were asking me about some tenant issues that have come up in the past week alone that did require an extra level amount of care, not only from myself over the weekend, but also from our staff. You know, where there was a real safety issue, you know, that came up that you can never predict. And we dealt with it. You know, I'm proud of having a village that can be responsive in those ways, but there's no way we can like address that in the JCA, if that makes sense. It's just different theories of how government should work. You know, we can't really control whether or not there's always going to be like a tenant activist in office, with or without consolidation. It's just the facts, you know. So I'm doing my best to separate like the issues that I really care about from this conversation, because it comes down to whether or not people want to just get rid of the village and have, you know, one local government running New Paltz versus two. So I did want to address our staff, our village staff, many of whom are here again tonight, many of whom I know watch every single meeting, and help chime in when I'm about to say something stupid and help me with get my facts right, all the time, and are just awesome. And I hope you hear what everyone in the community keeps saying, like that we all love you guys, you know, and like, I'm sorry about the stress that this is putting on you. You know, my door's always open, mine's always open. And I'm sorry that I don't have answers for a lot of the concerns. Like they just aren't going to be addressed in this process. They're also extracurricular. And you know, that is what it is. I do love hearing so much of the community talk about how awesome our local services are and how in particular our DPW is just like next level, you know. And like a decade ago, when I had joined a local political committee, I remember I was asked about how I felt in consolidation, and I actually found my notes from then. And I remember saying that I thought it would be a good pathway to ensuring all New Paltzians get the same level of service that village residents do, including tenants' rights and all the things people keep mentioning that our DPW does, right? And now I realize consolidation is not intended to address, and the process in many ways legally can't even address these issues. So they're just something we have to kind of separate. And again, remember, it's just, do we want to get rid of the village and have one government or not? And I'm going to get to that now. So I feel strongly that some decisions really cannot be made in silos. Changing the entire government structure is one of those things. I don't think it should be up to any one table of elected people ever. So I know a lot of people in a couple other public comment sessions keep asking for a straw poll, how do we feel and all of that. And, you know, I tend to always be a little bit more of an independent spirit and kind of, you know, a lot of us are like this, we keep our vote to our heart on things. And otherwise I've seen my roles being like, you know, here to shepherd in just the democracy part, because it's not how I feel about it that matters. It's really how all of you feel, you know. And gosh, like if my rent goes up one more time, like I'm piecing out to Shandaken where they were able to build a skate park quicker than me. So you know, yeah, so like if we had to do a straw poll right now, I would say I would be pushing this thing to a public referendum for these reasons. It should be a democratic decision and a democratic process. And that's just how I feel. It just should be up to people. I do think that we as a community can get more done if given at least a few full years to focus on important work. You know, like the meeting people where they're at, public works for the people, solving the root causes of ongoing infrastructural issues, so much more without continuing to go back to the same question over and over again as a community. I've heard it a billion times, and so have we all. So I think working through this existential crisis and just putting an end to it would be really awesome. And I think putting it to a vote would be the best means to do that at this time. So, you know, as far as the village goes, whatever the outcome, we will figure it out. We'll persevere. That's like what makes village people so awesome. No offense, outside village people, you're awesome too. But you know, we're all closer together in the village. We see each other's backyards. And like, you know, I can like look up from my balcony at my upstairs neighbors and be like, hey, guys. It's just a slightly different vibe in that way. So I trust in the village. And so I just want to address the one last thing that I've heard a lot about. I know I wrote a letter to the paper about this. We keep hearing trust. It's so important. Like right now, like it's so hard to trust. I mean, I've always felt it's hard to trust in government at all. And hey, like, yeah, and I agree with that long-standing statement. A lot of this is about trust, but I don't think it's about trust necessarily in this elected body. You can get rid of us at any time. In fact, this whole thing is about getting rid of 5 of us, myself included, right? But I do think we need to think about the trust in each other as a community, and just want to kind of bring things back to that, because yeah, it is about trust, but I've never expected to trust the government, you know? I mean, and I'm not even going to ask for your trust. I'm just going to keep promising to show up 110% every day. And that's the best I can do. Right. So to that end, this decision, it's not mine to be made. It's not any of ours to be made. So to that end, I just want to say we can trust our neighbors to do the right thing. You all have been doing the right thing. You've been showing up and sharing this out, and like, you know, making extra flyers and doing your own outreach, and, you know, doing your own research and bringing it back to us time and again. And I still have a ton of voicemails to get back to upstairs from just the past few days with even more bits of input, and just, it's so awesome. Like that's New Paltz. So just want to say, I personally am excited to put this issue in the hands of the people and get back to thinking and focusing on the issues that are my priorities as a public servant, and that I ran on the 2 times, you know, I've been on the ballot prior to this year. And, you know, again, give this issue to the people where it belongs. And I did make some asterisks I was taking notes with obviously the public, and then with the boards, with some ideas about where we can take the discussion next. But yeah, that was more than enough talking for a week for me. So, so maybe I'll kick it off and then you all can kind of chime in as needed. I heard Kitty say something important that I think we all agree with, and I just think it bears repeating, like fire department buy-in and continuing to work to that end. And so not to put anyone on the spot, but like Lauren, Tim, Emily, maybe even can help chime in where we're at with that, because there's a lot of work going on to make sure to try to get more clarity on the fire department issues and stuff. And it is kind of, to me, something that's in motion. And so I agree, I would feel more comfortable with fire department buy-in, but I don't know if we'll get that in time, just because it's a matter of like a lot of talking with people, but we can at least make sure everyone has the information, right? And so we're doing that. I want to say that we got a memo over, and it's like, so contracts, and this is the tricky thing, you know, it's both simple and complicated, right? So the contracts will exist until something else, until like the end of the contract, or we repeal it and have another one. So there's that to keep in mind. You know, there will be fire safety, you know, yeah.
If I can clarify my comment, because we did get a memo today from our attorneys.
Yeah.
And for me, the question was never, can we do this?
Mm-hmm.
It was, how does the fire department feel about going down that route? So, I don't know if Mr. Miller is still here. I mean, we know that we have the power and the authority to create the district in that way.
Mm-hmm.
But we need to feel that our volunteer fire department agrees with the contract that was, you know, and the memo that was sent out. So they received the memo today. So I'm assuming that we will hear back from them about if that path works for them, then I think we're on our way.
Could I speak to that a little?
Yes, please.
Sure. So I think we were in some of the communications that have happened over the last week or so, we've kind of gotten a little bit more focused on one of the concerns, and that's what the memo was intended to address. So we know that we can create fire protection districts, and that those districts can contract with the fire company to provide fire protection. That's a well-established thing. And we also know that a lot of the things that the village does, the town can also do, like everything to do with the equipment, the fire station building, the insurance and benefits and all that. But what we realized was still a little unclear to folks, and that was causing some concern, was the other administrative functions that go along with operating the fire company, the nonprofit organization, that have to do with their administration in order to provide that fire protection, and that the village has been supporting that administrative function. And so the question, and I think it was really valuable to come to understand that this was kind of a sticking point. The question was, how would that happen if we were under a consolidated town? And we identified two ways it could happen. Either the fire company could do the administration and be paid for that through the fire protection district, or the town could take over those roles. And we figured out how that would work. So I'm not, I'm really glad that they're gonna review with their attorney and see how that works. But I do feel like we've made some progress towards honing in on where the sticking points are and hopefully addressing them.
Thank you. That's perfect. This is why we have attorneys. Yeah, okay, cool. And thank you again, Kitty, for bringing up that bullet point. How do the boards feel like I feel personally we're addressing it how we can. Anyone else have anything that we might need to address in the JCA or in extra work between now and next week on the fire department issue?
Well, we just want to hear back.
Of course, cool. Of course. Okay, what other issues? So it's interesting, some of the bullet points reflect off each other pretty well. Like Kitty was talking about transition costs, feel underestimated. And Tim talked about, this is like intentionally conservative, and so I just want to point out, I saw some like harmonization, to use another word that we threw into the JCA in that part. But is there anything that we might need to address in the next few days in the JCA for other board members to feel better?
I'd like to see how people feel about budgeting for a town manager if the referendum passes. I just feel like it's a huge amount of work for 5 people. So I just let them. It feels to me like if we add whatever 150,000 to that budget, we won't be surprised if it has to happen.
We're gonna pay the town manager more than the county executive gets paid.
That's what they get paid.
So they can live in the village. It's expensive.
So I'm saying 150, including benefits, because we got.
Right, but there's no other municipal manager in any of the other towns in Ulster County.
But they haven't gone through consolidation process. This is if we consolidate, and we're going to have it in the budget.
So
there's a difference for me, people are going to turn their ballot over, and there are going to be 2 referendums. One is to raise the amount of the library gets. And the thing about the library is that you can go to the library website, and you can see their budget. It's all out there, exactly where every penny that they're asking for is going to go. It's a lot harder, this referendum number 2, shall we consolidate? So that's why I think it's really important that we do drill down into some of these questions. I'm not going to bore everybody by reading this thing, you got it all, but I have specific financial questions. And if we can get those answered, I think people will feel more.
So I just wanted to say, to that end, if other board members felt, adding a bit more into the contingency, or not 150K more, but to address, being able to take on more of the Arianas of the world, or, people who've served on the board and stuff, or, both community members, experts, because we have many among us as consultants, because that's the project manager role right now is a consultant, thinking about our awesome superintendent of public works, Blue, who's planning to retire, but I mean, and this is a thought I've had at like 2 a.m. a bunch of times and then haven't like gone far with it, you know, beyond this, but like, oh, what if we needed last minute to get somebody on as a consultant, you know, beefing up that transition cost, or the what if of and I think it would not be appropriate, Kitty, to actually put the town manager in the JCA. I think it would be up to that interim steering committee to figure it out. And we just got this conversation out here, so that will be a thing to consider, I think, for that group. And I guess I would be in it, so yeah, I'll bring it up then if that then happens. But I would be okay with adding a bit to the transition cost for a bunch of these what ifs. If people wanted to.
I'm happy to withdraw the town manager thing, but I think what I heard tonight is that, you know, our recreation department is really understaffed. Uno person, right? And the facilities show that. Also, in Terrence wrote an article last week, quoting Mike Beatty saying that that they need more code enforcement officers, but they're hard to come by because the pay is so much better everywhere else. So I think we need to, you know.
I
think
think
we just need to plan that we do need more staff,
Okay,
not less. we
But
need
Kitty,
more.
what you're describing has nothing to do with consolidation. What you're describing are budgetary decisions that elected officials may or may not make.
Well, I don't want to.
So you're
what I'm
conflating,
saying is I think we
the
all-
fact that maybe,
Right?
you're conflating the fact that maybe elected officials should be making different decisions about how recreation assets are spent or budgeted for, or, you know, should we add more staff? That's a real conversation, a real concern, and it has nothing to do with consolidation.
Well, it could be in JCA.
But this is a straw man argument. That's what this is.
I'm always.
So
Talk about consolidation, talk about,
We have
But then-
recreation in the JCA,
But-
right? And people brought it up tonight at the table. It's an ongoing problem.
but we're not building the future government's budget via the JCA.
Yes, we are.
No, we're not.
Well, I'm sorry, there are places where we.
No, we are not. If the future elected officials want to spend money on this, that, or the other thing, that's their choice.
Also,
And that's been-
consolidation would also alleviate a lot of the stress on the parks. Because we have two groups of people working at it, we combine everything together. The pool is always fun, because anytime we want to do something, we have to get the town and the village to agree on any kind of budget improvement, because the village has traditionally paid half and the town has paid half.
For capital.
Yes, that's what an improvement, yes, a capital improvement. So if we want to fix something like a pool cover or a liner or $1 million gutter or all the other things that are on there, we have to have both boards agree. It's super clunky and it's inefficient. Okay, so if we consolidate, that will alleviate a lot of the stress on our parks, because we can then have everybody be working on it instead of like, oh, I'm gonna ride the mower only here, you ride the mower everywhere. And it just makes like a lot of these problems will get better with this, not worse, but it's gonna be better.
So what other bullet points that were brought up tonight that aren't extra outside JCA? Because, you know, we're here to talk about edits to JCA, right? Like, what else can we address and actually make a change to?
You know, we've heard this thing, and it was a comment tonight about like, well, how come you can't take some of the village electeds and put them on the town board? You can do that, but we can't do that. The voters have to do that. And it's the same thing with this idea that like, well, why can't we take some of the savings that the village residents will enjoy? Can't we spread that more evenly? We can't, because that money has been, it's previously budgeted money. You're not like taking fund balance and sharing it differently. It's like you're taking two entities and you're overlapping them. We would not legally be able to like dip into this fund and share it somewhere else, because it's been contributed to by like a very specific group of taxpayers or ratepayers. Like, this is the conversation that we've had 1,000 times at this table when someone has like a leaky toilet and they say, can I not pay for my water bill? And we're like, well, you can't do that because state law does not allow you to take someone else's money. Like, this is not a for-profit entity. All of the fund balances are collectively owned. So you can't take, you know, William's money and give it to Kate. That would be highly illegal. So that's why you have the, you know, the proposed sharing of, you know, how things could be paid for in the future. It's a projection, but you're not taking someone else's money and then going to, you know, it's like the only way people's taxes are changed is if the assessed value on their home is changed, or if the tax rate that the municipality comes up with is changed. Those are the two variables. There's no other variables.
In terms of changing the JCA, it states that the current obligation of the village general aid fund to service short-term indebtedness issued for its benefit for the reconstruction of the village hall roof was $500,000. Tim has mentioned that you paid $150,000 of that down. Should it be stricken? Does it not belong in the JCA anymore? What is the status of that?
So you could again create a special district and silo that money if you want to consolidate the town and village, and then pull apart that money and say, oh, well, only village residents would pay for it.
So.
Right,
well,
but that's mechanically how this would work.
So if I can just say something about this, a framing that has helped me. Okay, so the census, like, so much of our lives is impacted by that one survey that's done, right? Our federal funding, everything. It's a snapshot of one day in time, like who is where on April 1st, you know? So if you have a year when people are not here because they had to move home because it's COVID, you know, on April 1st, it totally impacts things, and other things that have happened throughout time, right? It's like where you exist and call home on one day of the year. So a lot of this information in the JCA, it similarly is a snapshot of like a moment in time, you know? And so while a lot of it, you know, like is, yes, iterative and, you know, can be changed and edited because it's just a roadmap, like I'm uncomfortable with continuing to edit like the financials like every day. Like I would be okay being like, oh, go check out the village debt schedule. Here it is, or something like that.
I'm actually happy to see that in here.
Yeah.
Because it implies that this is going to be the new municipal building. And I think we need everything we can get to help renovate it. I mean, I don't know if there have been mold inspections. I don't know what the courthouse looks like up there.
Well, the annex is flooded and haunted.
Which came first?
I know.
We could turn that into a really good Airbnb. A lot of people from Brooklyn would pay extra for that. I think the village is missing out on an opportunity here.
Yeah, that's our next money making,
Chris, could you work on that?
I'll let you to bulldoze it.
oh my God.
But it doesn't matter whether the town and village use this building or don't use this building. The point is, this is a capital asset. The capital asset becomes owned by the townwide. That's all it is.
Is there debt?
The benefit.
Is there debt right now on the roof?
What?
The debt on the
What it
roof
says.
based on, okay,
Shall transfer to the town-wide general aid. fund
right, and that's the
for debt.
conservative language that's required to be in there. Since that has been written, there have been debt payments made.
I'm not
And then there'll be
concerned about
debt,
the
there'll be
amount.
debt.
I keep trying to say.
I can't hear you both at once, so can you just let Tim finish?
Finish my thought.
Well, I can't hear you both at once, and I
Okay,
asked a
but I
question.
No, I don't think I'm only asked a question.
I asked a question about whether there's still debt on the roof.
Yes.
There is.
Yeah.
So
And
then,
there's more debt in the town outside the village's B fund.
Yes, there is.
so then what's wrong with this statement?
Nothing is
Oh,
wrong.
okay,
What
okay.
I'm saying is that the implication is that this is gonna be the new town hall, and we need to start planning for that. I mean, it floods, I don't know if there's lead paint, I don't know if there's asbestos, but I'm glad it's here, because I think it shows that we are gearing up to try and make this building safe.
And one of the
And I-
changes,
Well,
sorry,
I understand that employees are working at home because they're headaches and, well, you know what I'm afraid of? I'm afraid that village employees are gonna end up in trailers like town employees.
well, one of the changes on the list today was to add a facilities working group to the
Yeah.
GCA that would talk about issues just like that if the consolidation goes ahead. So I
But
would like to
those are-
know.
But
if-
those are, again, are questions that have nothing to do with consolidation. Those are real problems. Those are real things to figure out. This community must figure them out, whether you end up with two boards or one.
Okay, so, but what we need to decide right now is what changes the board would like to have put into the draft for the next meeting, which is in a week.
Yeah.
So, are we, I guess generally, are there any concerns about the changes that were proposed earlier? Or are there other specific changes that we want to?
Pointed out that there are mistakes in the organizational staff charts, the controller thing has 5 positions on 4. We're missing one in the building department, the town building department, one of their positions isn't there. So I would just like us to give those organizational staff charts to all of the department heads and have them review.
Yeah, I have like queued like another recirculation to all village staff of every document, going out, I think at 11 or something, cause I just wanted to make sure I edited it one more time, but just to make sure, in case any more questions came up tonight, so yeah, we'll make sure to recirculate that. Everyone take another look. As far as the proposed edits, sorry, folks, it's really hard to get this stuff done. Yeah, thank you. And good seeing you all. So the proposed edits, how you all feel? Can we go on with them
I
or
move
should we
that
use them?
Adopt the proposed edits.
Okay, I will second that.
Well, so it's a straw vote as
It's a
of
straw
now.
vote, yeah.
Take I'm sorry,
Right.
just trying to make sure we comply with the law. And, yeah, thank you.
Yes, so straw votes, like just say something if you're not okay with these edits being included, and then we'll take it from there. Anyone not okay with just putting them in there?
Are we gonna see a red line version? Is that how we know where they can add it?
The chart has which page they're all on, and where there's red lines, they're in the chart.
So I haven't been able to find this.
And there is a red line.
Got it.
This is what we're talking about, I mean, yes.
Yeah.
You're referring to the edits that we shared at the beginning of the meeting, not the looser discussions we've had about other things since those.
Correct.
Yes.
Yeah, just the edits that we have blocked out and
Yeah.
they're ready to go. Okay. Cool. Okay, that's awesome. Because that was like a good amount of edits. It doesn't change the spirit of anything, you know, but yeah, we'll go ahead with those. And then as far as the other things that have come up, like, and I don't want to be rude to any of us, but like even my own, they're all like kind of extra
So
stuff.
There's one thing that I was gonna ask if we could circle back to, because it seems like we had a discussion, Kitty raised the point about the transition costs being significantly underrepresented. I know there's And also the idea that there might be capacity that's not figured into those transition costs. Maybe not in the form of a town manager, but of some other consulting capacity, that you mentioned. I know there are several people at this table who designed those costs and created those estimates. Some experts that aren't at the table as well. And I think that, Katie, I saw your memo and it talked about numbers 3 or 4 times more than that, but there was no basis for those numbers. So the people that have the basis was an AI search.
For the town of Orange Town and Brookhaven.
Which we just talked about how maybe, what a poor reference point some of those differently sized towns are. So what I wanted to ask is, do we feel like there's any reason to revisit the magnitude of the transition costs? I had recommended earlier that we make the language more exact because I think it was such a loose way of framing the number that, as I understand, many of you have taken time to accurately at least estimate. Is there any reason to revisit those numbers? Does anyone have a feeling that we need to add capacity in order to execute on what's supposed to happen in the interim period?
You know, and that's a really good question because it's like, I think my answer doesn't have anything to do with the JCA. It has to do with, decisions that should be made, and I'll lobby outside of, these things, for how we operate, budgetary stuff.
Can I ask a question? Just where do we think those incremental costs will come? Because I mean, there's staffing, there's consultant, there's equipment. But all of those seem to be covered in the JCA, or they're in budgets that we already have available. So I'm wondering where we think additional transition costs would come beyond people, consultants and equipment, which we already have in there.
I don't think there are going to be other categories. I think the categories we have are going to cost.
So are we saying we don't think we have enough people?
I don't think we have budgeted enough in those categories.
Well, our consultants, actually, including KT Tobin from the Benjamin Center, who insisted that we put contingency lines, said that she feels that the numbers are actually inflated. She feels that they're too liberal.
Well, that's the first time I've heard that. I mean, there's a lot of stuff.
What does that
you guys
include?
know that I don't, so.
Well, the point I'm just trying to ask this board is, do we feel comfortable with those numbers? Because it keeps getting raised, and I think that's one thing we just want to fix as a decision that we think can stay stable in the JCA or needs discussion. Those that are at the table for that discussion, we have consultants that were involved. Are the transition numbers something we want to leave as is?
I say yes.
Yeah, of course.
Well, I'm trusting those that have done the work. So I'm proposing that we leave those exactly as is, and there are memos about them, but they're not going to create change.
Yeah, I'm a yes with Rec, like, again, like, it's all based on like real actuals of a certain moment in time, and like, I have to like leave a bunch of my like what ifs, and based on different actuals at home, for this conversation, because they're other budgetary discussions that have nothing to do with the JCA.
Yeah,
So I'm like, oh, putting them here, yeah. Anything else that we should change in this document? I heard tonight, keep all boards. I'm like, you can't do that, unfortunately. So,
Well, my comments are in the written comment. I'm not going to all listen to that again.
I really appreciate you sending that. So that gives me another chance to just remind the public, submit your written comments to clerk@villagenewpaltz.gov or clerk@townofnewpaltzny.gov. Well, I always forget the NY and I'm sorry. By 5 p.m. on Monday. But if you could do it before Friday, we can be better prepared to make sure we include your thoughts in what we vote on next Wednesday. So with that, I'm going to make a motion to close our public hearing on the draft joint consolidation agreement with keeping the public, the written comment version, the written comments open until Monday at 5 p.m. We had a second, all in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Sorry, couldn't count Alan, but thanks for coming in. So with that motion to adjourn, we didn't need to do that, but yeah, I move to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. And good night.
How are your